Okay, my friends, this is one of the first looks here at the OPCD Conversion Tool in action to be able to bring you Inkscape SVG shapes into Blender, automatically topologize them, apply materials, and then be able to export them as FBXs and bring into Unity. So this is a super slick process. I think this is going to really be a great thing for our course building in terms of efficiency and being able to create some shapes and do some things that we haven't been able to in the past. This is not a run through with everything. I just want to show you some of the inner workings of the tool and basically how it's going to work for us here moving forward. One of the things you're going to get is a zip file that's going to contain these files. You're going to have a course conversion blend, a terrain folder, FBX folder. So what I've been doing is basically create a folder for my course and then unzip that into here. Within the terrain folder, you're actually going to not have all these things. You're going to just have three files, the GS Pro convert, and then these other two files along with it. And then in the FBX folder, it's going to be empty. Now, I would like to put out a massive thanks to a couple people here above the pin who has been hammered with my private messaging over the last month or so, has really done an awesome job in helping me create this tool. Essentially, he is one of the lead programmers for GS Pro, and he's a rock star. Additionally, John Meyer and Stingray have helped get this off the ground. They have basically helped push me along and keep me interested in this project enough to get it done so that we'll be able to build courses in the future, and who knows where this ultimately goes. So getting into this, for the course conversion, you're going to have an Inkscape file, and one of the things I want to show you is sort of a little difference than maybe some of the previous videos have shown is your naming convention. We're going to name our layers with this whole 0-1 format up to 1-8 or however far you go in terms of numbers of your holes. But you want to have the two digits here, and there's no space in that, so it's whole, no space, 0-1. Ultimately, when we take this into Blender, it's going to do all of our cutting for us. So if you look at this rough shape, it is not cut out. None of these shapes are. They're all just independent shapes. But when we take it into Blender, Blender wants to reorganize these alphanumerically. So it would put path 1447 first, or maybe there's even, it would put these on top of that. And so it would rearrange the entire thing. So if I've got 100 of these, it's going to resort them in terms of the alphanumeric order. Well, we don't want that because right now we want it to cut in the exact order that it appears, and that's this order. And so that's where Above the Pin has created this awesome little tool where we save this out, and then we're going to run this through that tool to rename things and then bring that into Blender. And that literally just takes a second to do. Now, there's a couple neat things which we'll be able to show in future videos, but say you had this cart path here on hole 2. That's this hole here. And say it actually ran between hole 1 and 2, and maybe they shared a rough. Well, you're still going to be able to do that, but they're going to have to be on the same layer. So you could have it hole 0-1, but in the end, all these shapes here at hole 2 need to be nested inside here. And why is that? Because it's cutting on a per layer basis. And so what I mean by that is it's only cutting these shapes. It doesn't know anything else exists. And so you could make one layer for the entire course as well. Why am I not doing that? Well, if you have 1,000 shapes, the way the algorithm works is it's going to take shape 1 and it's going to cut out 999 shapes from it. And then it's going to take shape 2 and do 998, and then 3, 997, geez. And in the end, if you did that to Blender, it's going to take a long time. And so this is just an efficiency thing, but you get the best of both worlds because you can have it be efficient if you need it to be, and if you want to combine things, you can. So there's no harm in saying, hey, I want all 3 of these holes to be on the same layer, and I want it to cut out exactly how it looks here in Inkscape, because it can do that. And so there's a lot of neat things, and you're not going to be limited when it comes to, oh, how can I trace this out? You'll be able to do it pretty much the way that it looks, and then have it cut that way. So we save this out, and then we go ahead and open our terrain folder that had this in it. And it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in this terrain. I'm just kind of keeping it all in the same space. And then I'm going to, let me delete this here. I'm going to copy it and then paste it. Why am I doing that? Well, if we use the original file and we run it through this little naming converter tool, it just resaves it right away, right over top of it. And so then now all of a sudden it's going to be named like hole 010001 dash path blah blah blah. And in the end, you'll see that when I bring it into Blender. In the end, you don't want to keep dragging and dropping over this convert. You only really want to drag and drop once. So I'm going to take this course tutorial now that I've duplicated, which is just a duplicate of the course SVG. Keep this as your pristine file, you know, and then drag and drop this over there. And now when I come into Blender and I go File, Import SVG, and I bring in this tutorial, you're going to see now I was playing with it before. Let me delete all this. Sorry, I was playing earlier there. So now when you see when it comes in, it's maintaining our proper order. And so see how this is hole 1, 17, 29, 14, 47? Well, that's the same order we had over here with 17, 29, 14, 47. And don't worry about that, it's flipped. This is correct. It's correct. Anyway, so it's got these in the order that we want them to be. Okay, so now let me show you the OPCD Conversion Tool, which is going to come in with the Blender file, that course conversion blend. It's embedded inside it, so it's always going to be saved inside there. And so you'll start out in the layout panels where most of you start. Click the scripting one, and then you're going to have this sort of window layout, and you'll be able to see the OPCD Conversion Tool, and you just hit play, hit this play button, and then the tab's going to show up. And you're only going to need to do that once, okay? So now you could go back to the layout panel. Now, it's going to import our terrain automatically. To get our terrain, though, we have to export that from Unity. So I've got an export terrain SVG. You're going to finalize your terrain. So this assumes you've done everything. You've flattened your T-boxes. You've fixed all your bunkers. You've fixed all your greens. One thing you might want to do too is you can export out this as an SVG. So if you do File, Export PNG, sorry, and then you can do this Export As, give it a name. You can export out this file, and then you can bring it into here and put it in as this first layer here. And then I've also converted that to 8192 by 8192. You'll see here on your export panel, you'll want to do page here and change this to 8192, 8192, and then you can export it out. But this page here, and then this is getting your resolution. Anyway, I've done this now, and then I've also changed my wireframe view here to be black. So if you go Edit, Preferences, and then you do Colors, and you do Wireframe Overlay here, make that black so you can see better. But this allows me to now see where my meshes are all going to end up. You know, so if you've got something that needs tweaking, now is the time to do it. So this is just a good final check before you take this into Blender, is to fix all these things. You know, maybe I want this to be smoother. Maybe I need to lower this. Maybe we need to move everything to the right just a little bit. But this is the time to do that, because we're going to now export this terrain, and you're just going to use this terrain export to OBJ, and you're going to do triangles, and quarter is your choice. Do not pick full or half. It will end up blocking your computer, or it will take a really long time, and I'm talking hours. And so then just click export, and then I'm saving this within here into my project. You can also save it into that other folder. So I've already got that saved out, but you could save it wherever you like. Ultimately, though, it's going to end up having to come back into this folder here. And so Raymond is my course. Within this terrain folder, I need to put this OBJ. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and bring that in there. Okay, so you'll see I've pasted my terrain.obj in here, and you'll want it to be named terrain.obj. The reason I'm being specific on where you want to put it, because in relation to this course conversion blend, it's going to do an auto import, so it knows it's inside that folder here. So ultimately you could change that if needed, but here's why I set that up that way. So if you click this import terrain button, it's now going to bring in our Unity terrain. And I'm going to pause while it does that. You can look down here, 6:29 is the time, and just I'll come back on when it's done just so you can see how long that took. Okay, so it's imported that terrain, and you'll see that here. Now if you look at our meshes here, so the numpad period after selecting something, you'll see how tiny those are in relation to this terrain. So in the end, now all we have to do is convert our meshes. Before we do that, we should decide on our bunker lip depth and our pot bunker depth. There are no pot bunkers on this course. So I'm just setting my bunker lip depth at 0.03. That's sort of the default. And I'm happy with that, but you can adjust that for some courses, like I think it's Royal Melbourne, that has some deeper bunkers. So anyway, I'm going to click Convert Meshes. And I'll go ahead and hit pause here. I mean, what it's going to do during this time is it's going to rename everything, and it's going to rename everything bunker, T, fairway. That's all based on those colors from Inkscape. It's also going to, you see how it's got this SVG mat? It's also going to reapply new materials and unify everything. So every bunker is just going to have bunker material. And so in essence, we might have 400 bunker meshes, but they all share the one bunker material. And then you'll see when we come back into Unity, it's just convenient. It's going to reduce our draw calls. When we had a previous course construction tool, it would do on a per mesh basis. So if you had 400 bunkers, you had 400 materials in there. And so that's just a lot more complicated for the computer, or it's just, I guess, boggier kind of is what I would say. So this is sort of a cleaner approach ultimately. But I'll go ahead and pause while it retopologizes here, does all our cuts for us, and renames everything. It's 6:32 there. Okay, so I'm back here. It's 6:35, so maybe it took about 4 minutes to convert all those holes. It hides the terrain here at the end, so ultimately that's where that went. You can bring it back if you need it. And then we're basically ready to export these. I did just want to show you kind of what happened here was see how these all got renamed. Look at the rough here. And if you look in the material property side of things, you'll see it's just got the rough, and then that's shared throughout the course. So all that's just coming from Inkscape, and then it is following the topology. If we do a batch export, you do have to select everything. Like I said, I think I'll just maybe one button change that. We'll have to get some user input on how you want to do this. The reason I separate is, think if like I messed up things and I just wanted to do hole one, then I can just do it on a per hole basis. But we're going to export everything here. So that shift left click, I don't think that's that big of a deal, but maybe some people don't want to mess around with some of that. So we could have a basic and an advanced kind of panel. So click batch export here, and it's going to run that routine, and it's done. And so now if we go look here in our FBX folder, there's all of our FBXs. So not a whole lot of time. I know I've done a lot of talking, but it really hasn't taken that long to get to this point. Now we're going to come back into our project, and I'm just going to I've got a dual monitor here, but we're just going to drag and drop this into our project. This is probably the most time-consuming part of this, is we just drop this into the assets, the FBXs folder, and it's going to just load. So I'm going to go ahead and pause while Unity brings all those FBXs in. Okay, so those FBXs are now in here, and I really should have put them in I made a meshes folder. FBX is really where they should have been. Let me delete that out. And let me sort of show you too on, I guess, some of the things that we're going to end up doing here. So the question is, hey, what about my materials? Well, if we just pick all of our FBXs here on import, one is you're going to have to change this to use external legacy, and then from models material, and then local materials folder, and then it's going to make our materials folder, and it's literally only the 8. I'm not going to hit apply yet because I want to add the collider as well. And now generate colliders, and now click apply. I'm also going to have some sort of UI replacement thing. So ultimately, say this is bunker, and you want to change the bunker to like one of my OPCD dual texture bunker material. Then you'll be able to just easy swap that out. Now you could just build that on the bunker layer material here, just doing the shader drop down panel. So let me show you that real quick. So to see, you've got these, and that does your entire course. Well, for this, you could change the shader drop down, and it's a little, and then just pick one of the OPCDs and build it here. But the other thing is we'll have probably some texture sets and material sets to pass around. This will all be done for you, and so then you can just easily swap these out for some of the ones that are already done for you if you desire. So let's drag and drop these in. I'm going to create a folder here called meshes. So create an empty, and I'm going to reset its position to 0, 0, 0, and rename this meshes. And then I'm going to drag and drop these into the project here, and then I'll put them into the meshes area. I just want to show you so they plop right onto the course. Let me put it back to our satellite overlay so it makes more sense. So they plop right into the course here. Now it's perfectly even with the course, so I know we're used to it being like offset higher by some like 0.1 or 0.15. So I'm going to show you how we're going to deal with this. We do this a little differently, which I like this way of doing this, but right now everything's colliding, and so how are we going to manage that? We already have your LiDAR file, and if you don't have that, or maybe you've done some adjustments, you're going to do your export raw here. And you're going to do this. I do this as Mac. You can do it as Windows as well. You just have to be consistent, but I've done it for Mac for years, so we just leave it. So bit 16, Mac, export. And then I'm going to save this as, maybe this is like your terrain adjusted. So maybe we'll call this terrain adjusted. My terrain raw is my original from Global Mapper. This is now my terrain adjusted. And you save that out. And then I'm going to bring that into Photoshop. So let me pause this and open that. So on import of that, it's going to show this panel. You're going to want your count to be 1, 16 bits, Mac, and then choose OK. And it's going to open that. Now, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to open that previous PNG that I made as well. So I didn't really go into that too specifically, but you would do File, Export PNG Image, change this tab up here to Page, and then change your export. It can be 8192 by 8192, but this time I actually wanted to match the LiDAR, which for mine is 4097 by 4097. And then I'm going to choose Export As, and then I'm just going to call this the course SVG LiDAR, so I know that that matches that. And then I'm going to go ahead and pause here so I can open that into Photoshop. Okay, so here's my SVG. This is in Photoshop here. I'm going to choose Select All, Edit Copy, and then go over to my Adjusted here, Paste Special, Paste in Place. Now, you can see this doesn't line up just correctly, and so you're going to have to flip it. And this is going to be Select All again as well. If you don't do Select All, the area it's going to rotate about is going to be closer to these points, and it's not going to work. And then you're going to do edit, transform, and I'm going to flip vertical. And then you're going to see that matches down here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. So you can see this is the imported SVG layer. And then we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to change our selection. So we're going to go select, modify, contract 5, and then we're going to do select, modify, feather 2. And then we're going to paint that or fill this in. So go to your paint bucket, and I'm on the new layer here, and paint bucket that in black. So make sure that's pure black. Paint bucket it in, and then change that to 9%. And then I'm going to hide the I'm going to hide that pasted SVG shapes. So you can see what that's done is it basically has created a darker version of the holes. And what that means is it's just going to layer those or lower those areas. You could leave it as black, but that's going to bury it, real deep. And I just don't want it to be that deep because it's going to create stretching or some topology on the sides. I don't know if that'll mess with, how the frames per second work or just what it's viewing while you're playing. So this is just a subtle lowering. So I'm going to show you that. So we're going to save this as, and this has got to be a raw, and then we're going to call this terrain lowered. And then I'm saving that as this Mac again, okay, and then back into Unity here, and then import raw, and then pick that. Now I've got it saving into my terrain backup within my project folder, and then that goes to my file history backup overnight. So I kind of like leaving it inside of the project, and it's just always there. So this terrain lowered now, and I'm going to go ahead and open that. You want to bring it in as a Mac. It's 4097 by 4097. Import, and then you're going to see this all cleans up. And then we're going to zoom in here. Let's grab one of those spheres that I was talking about earlier, and just F to zoom in. And now you can see, okay, there's a little bit of clipping at the edges, but this is pretty darn good in terms of meeting the terrain. And then obviously now we're going to put materials over top of all this. I'm going to just drag and drop some so you can kind of see what's going to end up happening. But ultimately, this is just referencing this rough material. There's going to be something to auto do it, but right now I'm just going to do it manually, where if you type in the word rough, you could just then pick all the things that say the word rough. Or you could just go change this rough material, and it's going to change to all of them as well. But right now I'm picking them all, and then I'm going to put an OPCD material over top of it. And I'll just do my satellite rough over and see what that looks like. That's pretty much going to look like the satellite, so it's nothing special there. But let me just, let's get this done so you can kind of see or have some idea. Like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to work. Let me just do the one hole. I don't know why I'm doing it this way, just to show you, but you can do it on a per, you could. Let me get rid of the wireframe so it starts to make more sense to you. Like, oh, okay, and then let me put a little bit of 3DG on it as well here. Oop, that doesn't look right. The satellite green, that looks like. I haven't tweaked all these, obviously. Have faith, it'll all be done eventually. But let's put a little bit of 3DG on this. Cool. So you get the idea. We're basically there. Our meshes are done. I didn't really zoom out and show you, but the entire front 9 is done, and it looks just like it was in Inkscape. Cool.